The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Fort Bragg as Major Sarah Chen sat in her rental car, staring at the birthday invitation in her hands. The pink and gold card felt foreign between her calloused fingers, its glittery surface catching the light like a taunt. After 18 months deployed in Afghanistan, everything about civilian life felt surreal, but nothing more so than this moment. Please join us for Madison's 30th birthday celebration, the invitation read in elegant script. Her younger sister's perfect handwriting hadn't changed since high school. Sarah traced the address with her index finger, their parents' house in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The same house where she'd last seen her family 2 years ago, before everything changed. She adjusted the rearview mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Her once soft features had hardened, her skin bearing the sun's harsh kiss from countless patrols. The scar above her left eyebrow, a parting gift from an IED explosion that had taken 2 of her soldiers, served as a permanent reminder of why she'd stayed away so long. The phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Please come, sweetheart. Madison doesn't know you're back. It would mean everything." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the last conversation with Madison before deployment. Her sister's words still stung. "You care more about playing soldier than your own family. When are you going to grow up and get a real life?" The drive to her parents' house took only 20 minutes, but each mile felt like crossing back into enemy territory. She'd led convoys through Taliban-controlled regions with less anxiety than she felt now, pulling into the familiar driveway. Cars lined the street, Madison's friends' luxury vehicles a stark contrast to Sarah's modest rental. Through the living room window, she could see the party in full swing. Madison held court in the center, her blonde hair perfectly styled, designer dress hugging her yoga-toned figure. Around her, a crowd of well-dressed 30-somethings sipped champagne and laughed at something on Madison's phone. Sarah looked down at her own outfit. Dark jeans and a simple black sweater that hid her military-hardened physique. She'd deliberately chosen civilian clothes, wanting to blend in, to avoid the questions and awkward thank yous that came with wearing her uniform. Her service pistol's absence at her hip felt like a missing limb. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed the small gift bag from the passenger seat. Inside was a silk scarf she'd bought from a local vendor in Kabul. Beautiful, handmade, and probably the wrong choice for Madison's contemporary tastes. But it was all she'd had time to grab before the emergency leave that brought her home. The front door opened before she could knock. Her mother, Ellen, stood there with tears already forming. "Sarah," she whispered, pulling her into a fierce hug. "I'm so glad you're here." "Hi, Mom." Sarah returned the embrace, feeling the familiar comfort despite the months of absence. Over her mother's shoulder, she could see her father, Robert, approaching with his signature reserved smile. "Let's not make a scene," Sarah said quietly. "I don't want to hijack Madison's party." Ellen nodded, wiping her eyes. "Of course. Come in, come in." Madison's in the living room with her friends. The house smelled of expensive catering and fresh flowers. Sarah noticed the photos on the hallway wall. Madison's college graduation, her engagement party, her promotion at the marketing firm. The few photos of Sarah were older, from before she'd made major, before Afghanistan had marked her. She entered the living room unnoticed at first, sliding along the wall toward the gift table. But Madison's best friend, Jessica, spotted her and did a double take. "Oh my God, is that Sarah?" Jessica's voice carried over the music, causing heads to turn. Madison spun around, her expression shifting from surprise to something harder to read. "Sarah, you actually came. Happy birthday?" "Maddie." Sarah stepped forward, offering the gift bag with an attempted smile. Madison took it with perfectly manicured fingers, her engagement ring catching the light. "Thanks. I didn't know you were back." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them as the other guests watched with poorly concealed curiosity. Sarah recognized some faces from high school, others from Madison's social media posts that their mother sometimes forwarded. "Everyone, this is my sister Sarah," Madison said, her tone carefully neutral. "She's in the army." "Military, how interesting," said a man in an expensive suit whom Sarah didn't recognize. "My company does defense contracting, mostly drone technology. Much safer than boots on the ground, don't you think?" Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "Every role has its purpose." "Oh, I didn't mean—" he backpedaled. "I'm sure what you do is very valiant." "Sarah's always been the tomboy," Madison interjected with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Even as kids, I'd be playing with dolls while she was out climbing trees and playing war." "Still playing war, apparently?" Jessica added with a giggle. The group laughed politely, and Sarah felt the familiar sting of being the outsider. She'd faced hostile insurgents with less discomfort than her sister's social circle. "So, what exactly do you do?" asked another woman, swirling her wineglass. Are you like a nurse or something? I'm a combat operations officer, Sarah replied evenly. But surely they don't let women in actual combat, the defense contractor said. I mean, legally. They changed that policy years ago, Sarah interrupted, her patience wearing thin. I've led 3 combat deployments. Madison rolled her eyes. Here we go. Sarah and her war stories. Can't we have one family gathering without talking about the military? You asked, Sarah began, but Madison had already turned away, addressing her friends. Sarah thinks she's saving the world while the rest of us are living actual lives. Getting married, building careers that don't involve playing with guns. I wouldn't call watching soldiers die playing, Sarah said quietly, but her words were drowned out by Madison's continued commentary. She missed my engagement party for some training exercise, missed Christmas last year, missed Dad's surgery. I was deployed, Sarah interrupted, heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't a choice. Everything's a choice, Madison shot back. You chose the army over your family, over having a normal life. Look at you, 32, and what do you have to show for it? No husband, no kids, no real home. Madison, their mother interjected weakly. What? Someone should say it. We tiptoe around Sarah like she's some kind of hero, but what has she really accomplished? Besides making Mom cry every night, wondering if she's going to get a phone call saying, "That's enough." Sarah's command voice, the one that had carried across battlefields, silenced the room. Madison's face flushed. See? This is what I mean. You can't turn it off. The soldier act. You're not in Afghanistan anymore, Sarah. You're in my parents' living room, at my birthday party, making everyone uncomfortable with your presence. Again, the guests shifted awkwardly, some pulling out phones, others suddenly fascinated by their drinks. Sarah felt the weight of their judgment, their dismissal. To them, she was just Madison's odd sister, the one who'd chosen violence over violins, uniforms over cocktail dresses. You know what? You're right, Sarah said, setting down her untouched champagne. I don't belong here. She turned to leave, catching her parents' pained expressions. Her mother reached out, but Sarah shook her head slightly. This wasn't the time or place. As she reached the doorway, Madison's voice followed her. Running away again? That's what you do best, isn't it? Leave everyone else to deal with real life while you go play hero. Sarah paused but didn't turn around. Enjoy your party, Madison. Happy birthday. She made it to the front porch before the tears threatened. Not from sadness. She'd learned to compartmentalize that emotion long ago, but from frustration. How could she explain to these people what she'd seen, what she'd done, what had been asked of her? How could Madison understand that every missed holiday, every absent celebration, had been spent ensuring people like her could sleep safely in their suburban homes? The front door opened behind her. She expected her mother, maybe her father. She didn't expect the man in dress blues. Major Chen? Sarah turned, hastily wiping her eyes. A full colonel stood on her parents' porch, his chest covered in ribbons she recognized. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, combat deployments that made her own service record look modest. Sir? She automatically straightened, muscle memory overriding emotional turmoil. Colonel James Mitchell, he said, extending his hand. I apologize for the intrusion. I was actually coming to find you. Me, sir? Confusion replaced frustration. I'm on leave. If there's an issue with my command, no issue, he assured her. Quite the opposite. I'm here on behalf of General Morrison. We've been following your actions in Kandahar, the convoy rescue, the intelligence operation that saved the embassy personnel. Your leadership under fire has been exceptional. Through the window, Sarah could see the party had resumed, Madison laughing at something on her phone while guests mingled. None of them had any idea about Kandahar, about the 72 hours she'd gone without sleep coordinating the rescue of 30 civilians, or about the specialist who died in her arms while she provided covering fire for the medical evacuation. Sir, I appreciate the commendation, but it's not just a commendation, Major. Colonel Mitchell's expression was serious. The Pentagon has authorized the creation of a new Special Operations Unit, Joint Forces, combining the best from all branches. General Morrison wants you to lead one of the primary tactical teams. Sarah's breath caught. Sir? Your unique combination of combat experience, leadership under pressure, and tactical innovation makes you the ideal candidate. This isn't just a position, Major Chen. This is an opportunity to shape the future of military operations. Behind them, laughter erupted from the party. Sarah could hear Madison's voice carrying through the window, probably telling another story about her successful marketing campaign or her upcoming wedding plans. When would I need to report? Sarah asked. The selection process begins in 2 weeks at Fort Benning. If you accept, you'll be working with the best operators in the military. Your team would be at the tip of the spear for critical missions. Sarah glanced back at the house, at the life she'd never quite fit into, at the family that loved her but couldn't understand her choices. I need to think about it, sir. Colonel Mitchell nodded. Of course. But Major, don't think too long. Officers like you, true warriors who lead from the front, are rare. Your country needs you. Your soldiers need you. As he turned to leave, the front door burst open again. This time it was Madison, her perfect composure cracking with anger. Seriously, Sarah? You're out here having some military meeting during my birthday party? Could you be more? She stopped mid-sentence, noticing Colonel Mitchell's presence, taking in his rank, his ribbons, the gravity of his bearing. The colonel turned back, his eyes moving between the sisters. Then, in a gesture that stunned everyone present, he dropped to one knee in front of Sarah. Major Chen, he said, his voice carrying the weight of ceremony. On behalf of a grateful nation and the soldiers whose lives you've saved, I'm honored to inform you that you've been selected for the Distinguished Service Cross. Your actions in Afghanistan exemplify the highest traditions of military service. The party guests, drawn by Madison's outburst, crowded into the doorway and windows. Their chatter died as they witnessed the scene, a full colonel kneeling before the woman they'd just dismissed as playing soldier. Furthermore, Colonel Mitchell continued, still kneeling, General Morrison asked me to deliver this message personally. Major Chen, your army awaits. The warriors you'll lead, the missions you'll undertake, the lives you'll save, they're all waiting for your decision. He rose, saluted sharply, and handed her an envelope bearing the Pentagon seal. The details are inside. We hope to see you at Fort Benning, ma'am. As Colonel Mitchell walked to his staff car, Sarah stood frozen on the porch, the envelope heavy in her hands. Behind her, the silence from the party was deafening. Sarah? Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. The Distinguished Service Cross? That's the second highest military decoration for valor, her father finished, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah turned to face them all. Her parents, Madison, the party guests who'd mocked her choices. Madison's face had gone pale, her mouth slightly open in shock. I didn't know, Madison stammered. You never asked, Sarah replied quietly. She looked at the envelope, then back at her sister. You were right about one thing, though. I do have to choose. I've always had to choose between the life you think I should want and the duty I know I'm called to serve. She tucked the envelope inside her jacket. Happy birthday, Madison. I hope you get everything you want from your normal life. As she walked toward her car, she heard footsteps behind her. This time, it was her father. Sarah, wait. He caught up to her, slightly out of breath. I know we haven't always understood your choices, but seeing that colonel, hearing what he said, we're proud of you. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Dad. She hugged him, feeling the strength in his aging arms. Will you take it? The position? Sarah looked back at the house, where Madison stood in the doorway surrounded by her friends, looking lost and smaller somehow. Then she thought about the soldiers waiting at Fort Benning, the missions that would save lives, the difference she could make. Yeah, she said softly. I think I will. As she drove away from her parents' house, Sarah felt the weight of the envelope in her jacket. Inside were orders that would change her life, challenge her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. The text from her mother came before she'd reached the main road. Madison is crying. She wants to talk to you. Sarah pulled over, staring at the message. Part of her wanted to turn back, to try once more to bridge the gap between them. But she knew some distances couldn't be crossed with words alone. Madison would have to come to her own understanding, in her own time. She typed back, tell her I love her. I always have, but I have to be who I am, not who she wants me to be. As the sun set over Fort Bragg, Major Sarah Chen drove toward her temporary quarters, the colonel's words echoing in her mind. Your army awaits. Tomorrow she would call General Morrison. Tomorrow she would accept her destiny. But tonight, she would allow herself to grieve for the family that might never truly understand the price of the freedom they enjoyed, and the sister who couldn't see past her own reflection to recognize a hero. End of Chapter 1. Tentar novamente. Go Kedatar Chapter 2. The Revelation. 2 weeks had passed since Madison's birthday party, and Sarah stood in the training grounds of Fort Benning at 0500 hours, watching the sun paint the horizon in shades of amber and crimson. Around her, 47 of the military's most elite operators went through their morning PT. Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Marine Raiders, and Air Force Special Tactics. She was one of only 3 women who'd made the selection cut. Major Chen. The voice belonged to Master Sergeant Derek Thompson, a Delta operator with 15 years of combat experience. Colonel Mitchell wants you in the briefing room. Now. Sarah nodded, handing off her training roster to Captain Rivera, the Marine raider who'd become her unofficial second-in-command over the past week. The selection process had been grueling. Psychological evaluations, tactical simulations, live-fire exercises that pushed even these elite warriors to their limits. But Sarah had excelled, her unconventional thinking and cool head under pressure earning respect from operators who typically regarded conventional Army officers with skepticism. The briefing room was dimly lit, with Colonel Mitchell standing beside a projection screen showing satellite imagery of a compound in Syria. But he wasn't alone. General Morrison, the 4-star commander of JSOC, stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding immediate attention. Major Chen, General Morrison began without preamble. Sit. Sarah took the indicated chair, noting the classified folders marked with the highest security clearance she'd ever seen. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room, the general continued. The rescue operation you led in Kandahar, the one that saved 30 civilians. Do you remember the intelligence analyst among them, Catherine Walsh? Yes, sir. CIA liaison. She was coordinating with local assets when the compound was compromised. That's the cover story. General Morrison slid a folder across the table. The truth is more complicated. Open it. Inside, Sarah found mission reports, photographs, and tactical assessments spanning 5 years. Her eyes widened as she recognized her own operations. Missions she'd thought were isolated incidents, unconnected tactical actions. Every operation you've led in the past 3 years, Colonel Mitchell explained, has been part of a larger strategic initiative. The convoy routes you secured, the intelligence networks you disrupted, the civilians you saved, all of it was orchestrated by a shadow unit within JSOC. Sarah's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't known existed. The irregular patrol patterns I noticed, the intelligence that always seemed too good, too precise. You weren't just a field commander, Major, General Morrison interrupted. You were being evaluated, tested. Catherine Walsh wasn't CIA. She's the Deputy Director of Project Prometheus, an initiative to identify and develop the next generation of special operations leaders. Why wasn't I informed? Because we needed to see how you operated without external influence. Your innovations in Kandahar, the way you adapted standard protocols to save those civilians, that wasn't luck or training. That was instinct, the kind that can't be taught. Colonel Mitchell activated the projection screen, showing organizational charts for the new unit. The Integrated Special Operations Command, ISOC, isn't just another Spec Ops unit. It's a complete reimagining of how we conduct warfare. Small teams, maximum autonomy, cutting-edge technology, and leaders who can think beyond traditional military doctrine. And you want me to lead one of these teams? Not just lead, General Morrison corrected. We want you to help design the entire operational framework. Your team would be the alpha test for tactics that could revolutionize military operations. Sarah studied the files, her tactical mind already seeing the possibilities. What's the catch? Smart question. The general's approval was evident. The catch is that this unit won't officially exist. No public recognition, no traditional career advancement. Your family, your sister, they'll never know the full extent of what you've accomplished or what you're about to undertake. The mention of Madison sent an unexpected pang through Sarah's chest. Since the party, they'd exchanged a few stilted text messages, but the gulf between them seemed wider than ever. There's more, Colonel Mitchell added. Your selection has attracted attention from the highest levels. The President's National Security Advisor wants to meet you. The Secretary of Defense has personally reviewed your file. Major Chen, you're not just joining a unit. You're becoming part of a very small group of people who shape how America projects force in the 21st century. When do I need to decide? You already have, General Morrison said with a knowing smile. The moment you excelled in every test we threw at you this week. The moment you earned the respect of operators who've never saluted a conventional Army officer. The question isn't whether you'll accept, it's whether you're ready for what comes next. A knock at the door interrupted them. Enter, the general called. Sarah's breath caught as Catherine Walsh walked in, the woman she'd saved in Kandahar, looking very different in a crisp business suit instead of dusty tactical gear. Major Chen? Catherine extended her hand. It's good to see you again under better circumstances. Ma'am. Sarah stood, shaking hands while processing this revelation. I owe you an apology, Catherine continued, and a debt. You saved my life, but more importantly, you proved every assessment we'd made about your potential. The way you coordinated that rescue, managed limited resources, and kept 30 panicked civilians alive while under constant fire. It was masterful. I did my job. No, Catherine's voice carried conviction. You transcended your job. That's why you're here. General Morrison stood. Major Chen, I need your answer. Are you prepared to disappear into the shadows? To accept that your greatest victories will never be known to the public or even to most of the military? To carry the weight of operations that will save thousands of lives but never earn you a parade? Sarah thought of Madison's words at the party, about having nothing to show for her service, about playing soldier. She thought of the party guests who'd dismissed her, the contractor who'd suggested drones were superior to boots on the ground. They would never know, could never know. Sir, she said, meeting the general's eyes, I've never served for recognition. I've served for purpose. If this is where I can make the greatest difference, then yes, I'm in. Outstanding. The general moved to the door. Colonel Mitchell will brief you on the immediate details. You'll have 72 hours to close out your current affairs. After that, Major Sarah Chen effectively ceases to exist in any conventional military database. You'll have a new designation, new clearances, and access to resources most field commanders can only dream of. As the general left, Catherine Walsh lingered. Can I give you some personal advice? Sarah nodded. The hardest part isn't the missions or the danger. It's the isolation, the inability to share your true self with the people you love. I've watched brilliant operators burn out not from combat stress, but from the weight of secrets. Whatever bridges you need to build or burn with your family, do it now. Once you step into this world, maintaining those connections becomes complicated. After Catherine departed, Colonel Mitchell handed Sarah another folder. Your team roster. You'll have first pick from the selection candidates. Choose carefully. These people will become your family in ways your blood relatives never could be. Sarah opened the folder, scanning the profiles of elite operators. How long do I have to build the team? 6 weeks of intensive training, then your first operational deployment. The timeline is aggressive, but threats don't wait for our convenience. Understood. As she left the briefing room, Sarah's secure phone buzzed. Madison's name appeared on the screen, the first time her sister had called since the party. Sarah? Madison's voice sounded different, uncertain. Are you there? I'm here. Mom told me you're at some training thing. Important military stuff. Something like that. A long pause. I Googled it. The Distinguished Service Cross. What you did to earn it. There were redacted reports, but Sarah, I had no idea. The people you saved, the risks you took. Madison, no, please, let me say this. I've been horrible. At my party, all those times before. I thought you were choosing the army over us, but you were choosing to protect us. All of us. Even when we didn't deserve it. Sarah stepped outside, needing air. You're my sister. That's never going to change. I want to understand. Really understand. Can we talk? When you're done with your training? Sarah closed her eyes, knowing that after this week, real conversations would become nearly impossible. Her new position would require cover stories, careful omissions, constant vigilance even with family. I'll try, she said, hating the necessary vagueness. Madison, whatever happens, know that I love you. That everything I do is to keep you and people like you safe. You're scaring me a little. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I might be traveling a lot for work. Communication might be sporadic. More deployments? Something like that. Another pause. Sarah? That colonel who came to my party. Mom said he was there to recruit you for something special. Is that true? In a way. Are you going to take it? Whatever it is? Sarah watched the operators on the training ground. Her future teammates preparing for a war most people would never know was being fought. Yeah, I think I am. Will it be dangerous? Every mission would be dangerous. Every decision could mean life or death for dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of people. I'll be careful. That's not what I asked. I know. Madison's sigh carried across the miles. Just come home, okay? When you can. We have a lot to talk about. I have a lot to apologize for. You don't need to. Yes, I do. Sarah, I've spent years resenting you for not being the sister I wanted you to be. I never stopped to appreciate the sister you actually are. The hero you are. I'm not a hero. Madison, I'm just a soldier. I know. But maybe I'm finally starting to understand what that really means. After they hung up, Sarah stood in the Georgia heat, feeling the weight of the choice she'd made. In 6 weeks, she'd deploy with her new team on missions that would take her further into the shadows than she'd ever operated. Her family would get vague explanations, delayed communications, and carefully edited versions of her life. But as she watched an F-35 streak across the sky, she knew she'd made the only choice she could. Some people were meant for normal lives, marriages, mortgages, Madison's marketing presentations. Others were meant to stand on the wall, to venture into darkness so others could live in the light. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother, forwarding a photo from Madison's social media. The post showed Madison at a charity event for wounded veterans, a cause she'd never shown interest in before. The caption read, "Proud to support our heroes. Especially proud of my sister, Major Sarah Chen, who reminds me every day that freedom isn't free. Army strong, sister hero." Sarah smiled, a bittersweet expression. It was a start. Madison was trying to understand, to bridge the gap between their worlds. But soon, that gap would become a chasm that no amount of hashtags or charity events could cross. Captain Rivera approached, sweat-soaked from the training evolution. "Major, we're setting up for the urban warfare simulation. You want to observe or participate?" Sarah pocketed her phone, compartmentalizing personal thoughts with practiced ease. "Participate? And Captain? Let's make it interesting. Full opposition force, limited ammunition, civilian variables." Rivera grinned. "Roger that, ma'am. The guys are going to love this." As she jogged toward the kill house, Sarah felt the familiar focus settle over her, the clarity that came when personal complications faded and only the mission remained. In 6 weeks, she'd lead these warriors into situations that would test every skill they'd honed. But first, she had to forge them into a team that could operate in the spaces between conventional warfare and covert action. Her phone buzzed one more time. Without looking, she switched it to silent and tucked it away. The world, her family, Madison, the life she might have had, would have to wait. Right now, her army was waiting, and Major Sarah Chen had work to do. The simulation began with flashbangs and automatic weapons fire. Sarah moved through the kill house with lethal precision, part of her mind already planning the training evolution while the rest focused on the immediate threat. This was where she belonged, in the heat of action, making split-second decisions that would keep her people alive. Outside, Colonel Mitchell watched through the surveillance feeds, General Morrison beside him. "She's remarkable," the general observed as Sarah coordinated a complex breach while neutralizing multiple threats. The transition from conventional operations to special activities, most officers struggle with it. "She makes it look natural." "Because it is natural for her," Mitchell replied. "She's been operating in the gray areas her entire career. We're just finally giving her the authority to match her instincts." On the screens, Sarah's team cleared the final room, mission complete with 0 civilian casualties and all objectives achieved. The general nodded approvingly. "Get her whatever she needs," he ordered. "Equipment, personnel, intelligence support. Major Chen is about to become one of our most valuable assets in theaters we can't officially acknowledge." As the exercise ended, Sarah emerged from the kill house, covered in sweat and simulated blood from the realistic training rounds. Her team gathered around for the after-action review, elite warriors hanging on every word of critique and praise from the major who'd earned their respect through action rather than rank. This was her world now, shadowy, dangerous, and absolutely vital. Madison and her parents would never fully understand the choice she'd made today, the life she was embracing. But somewhere in Syria or Afghanistan or any of a dozen other hotspots, American lives would be saved because Major Sarah Chen had chosen duty over comfort, purpose over recognition. The sun climbed higher over Fort Benning as Sarah led her team into the next evolution. In the distance, helicopters prepared for insertion training. Soon, those helicopters would carry them into harm's way on missions that would never make headlines. Sarah allowed herself one last thought of Madison, of the reconciliation they might have had if circumstances were different. Then she locked it away with all the other sacrifices she'd made for the sake of the mission. "All right, people," she called out, her command voice carrying across the training ground. "Let's run it again, and this time, let's make it harder." Her army was waiting, and Major Sarah Chen was ready to lead them into the darkness.